Good evening and welcome to Social Security and You, a Loudoun County Public Library program with John Bennett and Emily Dupre of Merrill Lynch. I'm Lorraine Moffa, Programming Coordinator for Loudoun County Public Library and your host tonight. Please feel free to type your comments and questions in the chat box and I'll be happy to relay them to the speakers during the Q&A at the end of the program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenters, John Bennett and Emily Dupre. John Bennett has over 34 years experience providing financial advice and is currently working with the Eveland Group at Merrill Lynch. He's a graduate of Virginia Tech with a degree in mathematics. And John, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce Emily.
Hey, thanks, Lorraine. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. I know it's summer, a lot of other things to be doing, but I tell you, we find that this is a topic that is so important, and so many people don't know that much about it. I do want to introduce Emily. Emily is actually with a company called MFS. I don't know if you've heard of them before. You may be familiar with companies, that maybe that you have the opportunity to invest with, like T. Rowe Price or Fidelity or Vanguard. Well, MFS is a very valued partner of ours over at Merrill Lynch. And I was speaking with her, about doing this, and she said, "Hey, let me come on." She does these type of talks all the time. And the thing I love about Emily was, lots of things I love about Emily, but one of the things is that we get a lot of calls from wholesalers to say, "We got great products, use us." Emily is one that always reaches out and says, "Hey, I got some ideas that will help you and help your clients have a great experience." And it has nothing to do always with investments. A lot of times it's, "Hey, have you thought about this kind of activity or that?" Things that really help us to be able to add value to our clients. So I really appreciate her approach to it, all the things she brings. And you'll enjoy hearing her speak a whole lot more than you will me. So with that being said, Emily, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and appreciate it and looking forward to what you have to say.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Lorraine. Good evening, everybody. My name is Emily Dupre, and I work for a money management firm like John mentioned. My normal job is I just listen to portfolio managers and analysts that we have around the world, and I streamline economic data to financial advisors. The second part of my job, though, which is my favorite, is I get brought in to educate the public on topics that are relevant to them. And I think Social Security is one of my favorite topics to speak to because it's going to be one of the only guaranteed sources of income you get in retirement, but it's an incredibly confusing and complicated topic. So my whole goal today is to leave you feeling so much more comfortable and confident with your Social Security election. Now, the presentation I'm going to give you is available for the public to view, so I will share it with John and Lorraine after the event. I do have to give the disclaimer, I am not going to be recommending that you do anything with your personal Social Security election. That's something you're going to want to talk with a financial professional about. So before we get started, unfortunately, I always tell people you got to go in person when you want to talk about Social Security. You got to go to the Social Security offices. Well, the offices are still closed due to COVID. So that leaves you with two options. Option number one, you're going to want to sign up online. You want to do that anyway, just so you can view your documents. Following this, I will send John a link with a helpful information sheet on how to go about signing up online and trying to make it as easy as possible for you. Second, you might find yourself having to call the Social Security Administration. Do not Google the general 1-800 number. That would be the nationwide federal number, and you can imagine how long your time on hold is going to be. So I'll also send John another link that if you type in your zip code on this link, it'll give you the direct dial for your local office. That will be a lot easier for you to actually connect to a person. Also, you don't ever want to call Social Security the first week of the month. Those are the longest hold times. And for whatever reason, calling on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday is actually a shortened hold time experience as well. So let's get started. So the first thing you want to know about Social Security is when is your full retirement age? Now, you might hear the acronym FRA, that stands for full retirement age. And the reason this age is so important is if you ever get a chance to look at your statement, on the top right-hand side, you're going to have an estimated monthly benefit that you're due to receive for the rest of your life for Social Security, as long as you file at your full retirement age. So it's really important to know what your number is. And if you look at my presentation on the top here, you see this horizontal gray bar. Anybody on today's webinar that was born between 1943 and 54, your FRA is 66. If you were born between 55 and 59, you want to pay attention to the extra months that are added. Social Security changed the FRA from 66 to 67, and as they did this, they grandfathered a few years. So for those on the call between 55 and 59, your FRA will be 66 plus some months. And then finally, anybody on this webinar born from 1960 on, your FRA is 67. And when I say anybody, I have 2 young children, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. As the laws are today, they also have an FRA of 67. So once you find out your FRA, you want to see if you qualify for the retirement benefit. I'm going to start here. I will go into spousal and survivor. Now, the retirement benefit is the most popular benefit. It's the benefit we think of that we get from Social Security. In order to receive one of these, you have to have paid into Social Security for 40 quarters. Now, that's essentially 10 years of earned income. It does not need to be consecutive. You can go in and out of the workforce as long as you get your 40 quarters. It is calculated off of your 35 highest earning years. So some people will go check out their Social Security statement today, and there's actually a page in there that has your history of earned income. The IRS feeds directly to Social Security. And if you go back maybe 5 years later and you see your number has gone up, your monthly benefit, well, that's probably because you're accruing higher and higher earning years. So again, it's based off of your average 35 highest. I'm going to come back to this page, but I want to show you the max versus the average to give an idea of what the benefits look like. Again, just for those claiming at full retirement age. Now, there's a lot of numbers on this page. I just want you to go to the bottom left-hand side. You see here the maximum monthly benefit. So there is a max that you can hit, and that's anyone that's averaged $142,800 for their 35 highest. And the highest paid out in 2021 is a monthly payment of $3,148. So that's some pretty good extra income and guaranteed extra income. That's why you want to make sure you get your Social Security election correct, because that's a good number. Unfortunately, though, that is the highest paid. It is not the average. If you move to the right, you'll see the average monthly benefit today for a claiming person at FRA is about half, $1,543. So that number is a bit lower, and I think it's very important to know that Social Security is not meant to be your only income in retirement. It's supposed to be a supplement to your income in retirement. Okay, so let's go back to our previous page, and I want to talk about what happens when you claim depending upon your age. Now, we have 2 graphs in the middle of my page here. The one on the left in blue is for those on the webinar that have an FRA of 66, and then the one on the right in green is for those of an FRA of 67. I'm just going to be speaking to the blue graph today just to not have to double talk, but you can again refer to the graph that's appropriate for you. So let's go to the blue graph on the left, and this is again an FRA of 66. And if you look in the middle, you see the number 66 years, and above that is a 0%. Well, that means if I file for my retirement Social Security benefit at full retirement age at 66, I will get the exact number that's on my statement. I will not get any less, and I will not get any more. Now, unfortunately, the average person doesn't wait till their FRA to file. The average baby boomer today files as early as they can at age 62. Well, look what happens if you file before 66. You see these negatives. You actually get a permanent reduction in benefit the earlier that you file. The earliest age being 62, that will lock in a 25% reduction in benefit for the rest of your life. So the question is, well, Emily, why are people doing this, especially so commonly doing this? There's a couple reasons. First of all, there are people that can't afford not to, right? And that's very difficult. And sometimes you have to claim just based on your income and the amount you save for retirement. However, more often we see just people do it because they think they should, right? They hear the word, I can file early. And if you think about it, early is a positive word. If I say, hey guys, it's midsummer, let's end this seminar early. That sounds good versus we're going to stay late. We're going to take a lot of your time and let's stay late. So people file early because they think early is good. I want you to change the word early to reduced. If you file before your FRA, you will get a reduced benefit for the rest of your life. And then finally, there are the group out there that are nervous, right? We all read the periodicals that, oh my gosh, Social Security might run out of money. They could run out of money. What happens if my benefit's not there for me? I want to take it as early as possible. I will tell you, Social Security is not necessarily a difficult program to fix. It's incredibly political. The two easiest ways to fix Social Security and very quickly would be to raise taxes and then change some of the entitlements, something like raising the full retirement age to not 67, maybe 68 or 69. So those things would be solves for Social Security. However, going back to politics, there's not a lot of people that want to run and say, hey, I'm going to raise your taxes so we can save Social Security. So we do think they'll wait till it's a bit more mission critical. In our opinion, the best thing to do is consult a financial advisor and figure out what makes sense when you file, specifically if you have questions about filing before your FRA, because you will get that reduction. Now let's look at the other side. The longer you wait to file for Social Security, up until age 70, you will actually get an 8% increase in benefit per year. So if I file at age 70, I will have a 32% increase on my benefit for the rest of my life. Now, waiting to file for Social Security past your FRA is also a financial planning decision. Are you still working? Can you afford to do this? But it's also a longevity decision as well. And I know we can't predict our own longevity and our death, but you can do some family history. If you wait to file at 70, the break even, so the time you'll receive that money back from waiting those 4 years, is about a decade. So if you live into 80 and past, you'll actually be making extra money on Social Security. So it's about a decade. People ask, what's the break even if I wait till 70? That's the answer. And then finally, if you're married, the survivor benefit's actually based off the benefit you're receiving. So in that case, you would actually take into the account both your lifespan and your spouse's lifespan, because in that way, the survivor benefit, which I will go detailed into soon, they can actually get that extra 32% as well. So it's definitely a financial planning decision. I just want to provide you with what happens today when you file. You file at 66, your FRA, you get exactly what it says in your statement. You file before, you're reduced, and you file later, you have an increased amount.
Emily, let me interrupt you 1 second right there. I have a question. To get the increased benefit, do you need to keep working? For example, do you still get the 8% annual increase if you retire at 65 but don't claim until you're 70?
Great question, Lorraine. You do not need to keep working. You could retire from the work at 63 and not claim until 70, and you would get that 32% increase. The only benefit or change in benefit would be based on your earning years. So if you do retire at 62, you are locking in some zeros until you file. So that might change your 35 highest earning years. It might tweak your benefit a little bit. I actually have a calculator I can share again with John and yourself that if you're planning on retiring before filing, you could actually plug in some of those zeros or lower income numbers to see if it substantially changed your benefit. But no problem at all. You can be working, you can be retired. You will automatically get that 8% per year. It just depends when you file.
And one more thing to clarify before you go on, please. What do you mean by your break even?
So if I were to file at 66, I would start receiving my check now, right? So I'd start getting that monthly money right away, right? And the amount of that money in those 4 years or 2 years or however long it takes for you to wait to get your money, right? I could have had it now, or I can wait till 70, right? So now I'm going to get it later. So in order to kind of catch up for what I would have had today, that same amount of money, it's about a 10-year time frame where you win. Anything past that, you're actually making more money off of Social Security than you should be. Yep.
And the cap at 2,148 remains the same if you wait until 70?
It does. Yep. And that number usually goes up a little bit each year for inflation. So does the average benefit. So does the max. Yep. Yep. I do want to talk about something that you mentioned about working. So there is a caveat for workers on Social Security, but it's on those that file early. So let's go back to this page we saw here. So Social Security, they really want it to be a retirement benefit. So they have something called the Work and Social Security Earnings Test. If you file for your Social Security before your full retirement age and you continue to work, if you make over $18,960 in earned income, every $2 over that number is $1 withheld from your Social Security check. You literally will not get it. Now you'll get it later once you hit your full retirement age, but obviously it's already locked in at a reduced rate. So let me give you an example so you can kind of follow through what I mean. So let's say, like the average baby boomer, I file for Social Security at 62. I'm taking it early, right? I'm taking it reduced, but I'm keeping working. And let's say I make $22,960 in earned income. That's $4,000 over the earnings test. Well, that means every $2 is going to be $1 withheld. So by doing the math there, I'll have $2,000 withheld from my Social Security benefit. If my benefit was supposed to be $1,000 a month, my first 2 checks, I will get nothing. So that's how that works. It's really important to know, and not a lot of people are aware of this. And it's not just the retirement benefit. It also applies to those that want spousal or a survivor benefit. So if you're choosing to file for Social Security before your FRA, you have to be very careful of this earnings test. For those that turn FRA, the earnings test goes completely away. So as long as you file at your FRA or later, you can make as much money as you want, and there is 0 withholding from your check. I could file at 68, I could be making $1 million a year, and I'm going to get the benefit I'm supposed to receive. So just to recap what we've talked about so far, we've discussed your full retirement age and the importance of it and knowing it. We've discussed what happens when you file, depending upon your full retirement age. If you file before, you're reduced, you get your amount, later you get an increase, and the possible penalty of an earnings test if you decide to file early and continue to work and make over the limit. I'm going to switch now to the spousal and survivor benefit. We're going to start with spousal. Now, it's very important to know that you only ever get one Social Security benefit, and it's whatever's the highest benefit. So, for example, if myself and my husband have both worked our whole lives in good jobs and paid into Social Security, we're probably just going to each take our own retirement benefit. However, in reality, my husband's actually been a stay-at-home dad for the bulk of his working years. So in his case, the spousal benefit may be the higher benefit. You're always given whatever is the highest. Now, unlike the retirement benefit, there is no earnings or work criteria to receive a spousal or survivor benefit. You just have to be married to somebody who is eligible for a retirement benefit, or if you're divorced, you have to prove 10 years of marriage to somebody who was eligible for retirement benefit, okay? So the spousal benefit also is a little bit different in how it works. You can't file for a spousal benefit if you're married until your spouse files for their own. So essentially, my husband is 1 year older than me. He would have to wait to file for spousal off of me until I file for my own benefit. So he can either file for his own and then switch to spousal if that's higher, or he'll have to just wait to file till I do. If you're divorced, that doesn't apply. You do not have to wait for your ex to file. Social Security did not want to get involved in that. So if you're divorced, you don't have to wait for your ex to file. They just have to be of filing age. The calculation on spousal. So again, we have our 2 graphs here. We have blue is for those of an FRA of 66, and then green is 67. I'm just going to talk to the blue. If you file for spousal at your full retirement age of age 66, let's go out to our blue graph. We see 66, 50%. That is the highest amount of spousal you can get. It's 50% of your spouse's full retirement age number, regardless of when they themselves filed. So for instance, if I am supposed to get $1,000 a month in my own retirement benefit at FRA, and my husband Patrick files at his FRA for spousal, he'll get $500 a month. It's 50% of whatever the FRA benefit is. Now, even if I filed early for my retirement benefit and I was getting a reduction, that will not negatively impact Patrick. It's based off of the FRA. Unfortunately, if I wait till 70 and get the extra 32%, Patrick can't get that in the spousal either. He won't get half of that extra number. It's always half of whatever the FRA is. That's how it's calculated. Same thing before, if Patrick, my husband, were to file for spousal before his FRA, he would lock in a permanent reduction. And on the screen, you can see that the earliest he could file is at 62, and then he would only get 35% of my FRA number. Now, I'm going to say this. There is no more file and suspend. The worst mistakes that we see is somebody says, well, my neighbor told me I could do this. Social Security is so much more black and white than it's ever been before. So what you cannot do is you cannot file for your own benefit at 62 and lock in a 25% reduction. I'm going to file for my own at 62. Then when my husband files for his, I can't get 50% of his. Once you locked in that age 62, you are stuck in the reduced spousal bucket as well. Or if you filed at 63 for your own, you're stuck in the reduced spousal at age 63. There are no switch ups called file and suspend, no matter what. So make sure before you file, you know the exact numbers you're going to receive. Okay. Social Security will automatically give you the higher benefit. So if you happen to already file for your own and then your spouse files for theirs and then you get a higher check, they know the numbers to be giving you. It's the one benefit still, but it's whatever is the highest. There is one switch up left, but I'm going to call it my see me afterwards because the amount of people today that can do it, it's so rare, it's almost phased out. So please write this down if it applies to you, and I want you to reach directly out to Lorraine or John and we'll get you the information. The only switch up left is called restricted application. 3 things must have to happen in order for you to qualify. Number 1, you have to be born before January 1st, 1954. Number 2, you have to be within 4 years of age of your spouse. And number 3, you cannot have applied for a benefit early. You've had to wait to your full retirement age, and at this point, you would be well into your, and then you're 68 at this point if you're born in 54. So again, born before January 1, 1954, 4 years of age of your spouse, and you have yet to apply for a benefit. You're the only switch up left with spousal. Everything else is completely gone. So now your options are file for your own benefit, file for spousal, file for both, whatever is higher, they'll give it to you. But again, most important is pay attention to the age that you're filing at so you're not getting any reduction that could last permanently. Okay, let's go to survivor. So just like spousal, survivor, you do not have to have any working years. You just have to be married, or if you're divorced, 10 years to someone that's receiving a benefit. Spousal is so much more lenient. Survivor is so much more lenient than spousal. So let's look at our graphs first. We've got, again, blue for the FRA group of 66 and green 67. The way spousal works is if I file, I'm 66, I file for my survivor benefit at 66, I'll get 100% of the benefit. So survivor is based on the actual benefit the person is receiving, not the FRA benefit, the actual benefit. So if my husband and I are married, I'm getting $1,000 a month in my retirement benefit, and my husband is getting $500 a month in spousal. If I pass away, my husband will switch to the survivor benefit, which is essentially taking my benefit. So now he'll get $1,000 a month. So that's how that works. And again, depending upon when you file, he might get a little less if he files early. Now, there are switch ups allowed for survivors. So if you're on this call and you're cringing, you're like, well, Emily, I already filed at 62. I wonder if that was the wrong thing. Survivors do have a switch up option. So you have 2 options. If you become a survivor, you have the option to file for your survivor benefit as early as age 60. Now, if you look at this graph, you see it will be reduced. So you'd get 71.5% of the survivor benefit, but then you can switch to your own benefit as late as 70. So that could be a tactic. Or vice versa, you could file for your own retirement benefit as early as 62. It would be reduced. But then at full retirement age, 66 or 67, you can switch to 100% of the full survivor benefit. So switch up is allowed for survivors, but just remember, in both those scenarios, you are filing early. So that dreaded earnings test comes into play. So I've met widowers and they said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and file, and they're making $100,000 a year. They're going to have to wait till they retire because the earnings test will just null and void their check at the time. So I know that's a lot to think about, but Social Security is really good about giving you whatever the highest benefit is, and it almost always happens automatically. So you'll see changes. If you ever question it, again, pick up the phone. They know the numbers, and they can help. The final thing with survivor, I sometimes get the question, well, what happens if my spouse dies before they claim, right? What happens if they were waiting to claim? if your spouse dies before their full retirement age, their survivor benefit will automatically go to whatever the FRA number should be. So if I died at 62 and at 66 I was supposed to get 1,000, my survivor benefit would be 1,000. If I died waiting and getting those 8% a year, like waiting until age 70, you'll get those too. So if I die before filing at age 70, I'll get that 32% extra in survivor benefit. Survivor benefits based on the actual benefit you're getting, and they'll automatically give you the highest that they possibly can. Okay, so we just did spousal and survivor. Most of my conversation so far has been talking to you as if you're married. So let's talk about divorce. Now, you might have gone through divorce, but I'm sure you know someone that has. Again, Social Security is really good for divorcees too. So the magic number is 10 years. You will need your marriage certificate and your divorce decree to prove 10 years. So if you're contemplating getting a divorce and you've been married for 9.5 years, wait 6 months. You've got to get to 10. As long as you get to 10, you're due a benefit. So I'm going to use my husband and I again as examples. So let's say I'm getting $1,000 a month in my retirement benefit, and my husband, Patrick, is getting $500 a month in spousal. Let's say after 10 years, we end up getting divorced. Nothing changes. I get the $1,000 a month. He gets the $500 a month in spousal. He can still draw that spousal because he's proven the 10 years marriage. The person taking the retirement benefit can remarry. So I could get married to a second spouse. And if that's the highest benefit, they can take the same spousal. So I could be getting $1,000 a month. My new spouse could be getting $500 in spousal, and my ex-Patrick can also get $500 in spousal, right? So there's no negative impact. You don't have to worry about losing a benefit if you go through divorce. Now, the one that does have to be careful is if Patrick in this scenario were to remarry. So if you were the one taking the spousal or survivor benefit off of your divorcee who was the one receiving the retirement benefit, you could have some issues. So on the graph here is how the rules work. If my husband, Patrick, and I were divorced and he was taking my spousal benefit, if he remarries before the age of 60, he will have to forfeit both the spousal and survivor benefit off of me. His options then will be to take his own if he has one, or his new spouse's as long as he's married for at least a year. If he waits and gets remarried after age 60, he'll still forfeit the spousal, but he actually can keep the survivor. This is one of the only scenarios where I've ever seen that Social Security didn't automatically give you the highest benefit. So if you were married a long time ago for at least 10 years to a millionaire or a billionaire, whatever, and you've gotten divorced and you got remarried after age 60 and you find out your ex passed away, you can actually go get their survivor benefit. Even if somebody else is taking the same survivor benefit, you are due that benefit. So obviously you can see there are some possible changes and entitlement changes that can be done to Social Security, but these are how the laws are today. The last thing to make it even more muddy, look at this second blurb here. If that second marriage ends, divorce, annulment, death, Patrick's second marriage ends, he can go right back to my benefit. So folks, we are very glad that Hollywood marriages don't last a decade because they would have already bankrupted Social Security. So major numbers, 10 years, and then after 60 if you're divorced or going through divorce. I'm not going to talk today about government benefits because they're very tricky. And again, it's for a certain group of people. See us afterwards. The only people on this call that have to see us afterwards is if you were part of SERS. That's the Civil Service Retirement Program. You were hired for the government before January 1, 1984. There is a calculation used where people in this group may or may not get a Social Security benefit if they retired from the government and then worked in the private sector and paid their due. So the government plans are a little bit tricky. I'm not going to go into it today because it doesn't affect all of you. But if you're part of SERS, you can go ahead and reach out to Lorraine or John and we can help you out. I'm basically just going to say you have to call Social Security directly for that group. The last thing I kind of want to leave you with is this is kind of a hidden one, and I don't want people to ever be surprised for this because it's really dealing with younger people. Social Security is a really archaic program. They have not changed a lot of laws. They haven't updated a lot of things. This is one that I believe needs to be updated, but it has yet to be addressed. And it's called the Recent Work Test for those that can qualify for Social Security disability benefits. Now, if you look at this first notch here, I only want to talk to this group. if you become disabled before age 24 and you have not worked for at least a year and a half in a 3-year period of time, you will get no Social Security disability. Now, think about when this was created, age 24 back then, 24 was the 50, right? Those people had worked for ages by then. Fast forward today, right? 24 is like the new 12-year-old. You have people that don't get their first job till they graduate college. And whether that's right or wrong, that is the case. And we all know the college years can be a little bit iffy. So you don't want to have anything negative happen to your child, your grandchild. If they become disabled and have no work history, that's not there. So I bring that up. So I'm going to stop now. I'm not going to get into taxes. You just see your CPA, but I can get you this presentation. I don't mind taking questions, Lorraine, but what I do ask is you don't ask anything personal to yourself, because I don't want you to have that information out there. If it's personal, you're going to want to take it up with Social Security, but I'll happily answer anything about what I talked about today.
Okay, well, thank you for breaking down a very difficult subject into small bites for us today, Emily. And does anybody have any questions? If you do, please direct them to me, the host, so that I can see them. If you send them to John or Emily directly, I will not see the questions.
And I will absolutely get this presentation as well as those links out. They will have to come through. Oh, go ahead.
I appreciate that. Someone's asking if there's a maximum benefit. I think you
Yep.
gave that figure earlier.
There is a max benefit. The maximum paid today for the highest average earners is, this is the FRA benefit. So I'm not adding in any extra 8% per year. So the maximum FRA benefit is $3,148. If you're in that income bracket and wait till age 70, you'd have to add 32% to that number. So that is the most paid out today.
What happens if both passed away? Will the children get those benefits?
Depending upon the age of the child. So there is minor children, you will get the benefit until you reach adulthood. But if, let's say, my husband and I are older and we have 30-year-old kids and we pass away, they don't get the benefit.
Okay. Someone's asking if you'd please throw up the slide near the end with the tax implications.
Of course. Yep. And this is the only thing I do say as a caveat for those that choose to work and draw Social Security. So if you're working and taking Social Security, you are taxed both ways. You'd be taxed on your FICA tax, which is down here. So that's going to come out of your paycheck. And then you'd be taxed on your income tax, right? The Social Security tax as you're drawing it. And that's kind of the social part of the program. So definitely seek out a CPA. And also that's another thing I like working with financial advisors on, is there are ways to get your adjusted gross income down. You kind of want to stay below brackets if you can. This is showing you the brackets. Unfortunately, with Social Security, they're pretty low. But with Medicare, it actually matters a lot more.
Some states, though, don't tax Social Security. Is that correct? Benefits?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It's a federal program.
Okay. How long does it, maybe I'm thinking of pensions or something else. How long does it take for the benefit to start since once you apply?
So great question. So I would not consider the government or the Social Security Administration very fast acting entities. However, they do get it pretty quickly. So you can file for your Social Security up to 3 months before your full retirement age. So if I'm going to file, my birthday is June 1st, and if I'm going to turn 66 or 67 June 1st, I can actually go in May or April to start the filing process. That will expedite your check coming that very first month. What ends up usually happens is you almost get a double check if it's laggard. Like if I say I'm definitely filing June 1st of 66 and I don't get my first check for 2 months, the money will all be there for you. They'll just have more. I do want to mention this. When you file for Social Security, there is a box you can check, and it essentially says maximize my first monthly benefit. By checking that box, they will give you 6 months worth of your retirement benefit. Now, it does come with a catch. They will move you back 6 months in filing age. So let's say I plan on filing at my FRA and I didn't get around to it till 6 months later, maybe not so bad to check it. But if I file exactly on my FRA and I check that box, I'm now filing at 65 and a half. I will get the reduction and the earnings test would apply during that period of time. So it's really best for people that forgot to file, elderly people that just didn't make it on time, terminally ill. We definitely say file, get that as much as you can up front.
Okay. So this person's following up or someone different. My husband applied in February 21st, and as of now, the benefit has not started. He turns 62 March 1st. Is that a COVID thing?
Yeah. And that I would call. I would absolutely call. Use that link I send you, put your number, you got to call. COVID has changed a lot. The US mail has been changed a lot. People are moving around, and I know all the Social Security people are slowly getting back to their offices, but they're not seeing clients in them yet.
And someone's asking, how do you file for Social Security?
So in person or online. Again, I highly recommend the in-person if it's back to when it's time. They can't provide advice just like I can't, but they can answer yes or no questions. But I'll provide a link on exactly how to file online if you wanted to go about that way. The hardest part is actually just getting your account started. They ask a lot of personal questions of things like you got to remember from a long time ago. So get yourself in a good headspace, but their website's fairly user-friendly once you're in it.
Can you file and specify what you want your starting benefit date to be? For instance, you file and say, I don't want this to start until I'm 70.
No. So unless you're 3 months before age 70. So
Okay.
when you go to file, you're filing. So you can specify the exact date if it's within the 3 months of filing.
I'm sorry, I don't know this, but maybe you two know, is there a Social Security office in Loudoun or Fairfax County? Or where is it? There's got to be one in the county.
I know that there's one in Manassas and I know there's one in Winchester. Those are the only two that I'm familiar with.
Someone said there's one in Reston as well.
Okay, there could be. I wasn't familiar with that one. I'm used to the people going to either the Winchester one or the one in Manassas.
Okay.
And if I were to choose, if they were open again, I would send you all to Winchester, not because they're necessarily better, it's just because there's less people.
Yeah.
Good point. If you are divorcing after age 60 and are currently receiving a restrictive application Social Security benefit, do you forfeit the spousal benefit with divorce?
So I don't know. That might not be asked the right way. You only ever get one benefit. So it's always whatever's the highest. If you've been married for 10 years and you get divorced, you can receive whatever's the higher benefit. It's either going to be your own or the spousal. The only way you would ruin the option to have spousal is if you are to remarry.
Okay.
But you wouldn't forfeit any benefit unless you remarry if you do it.
And someone noted that there are states, there's 37 states that don't tax Social Security or in DC, but your benefits may still be subject to federal taxes depending on your income. So
yeah, I think it's all federal.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you asked, I was thinking the payroll tax, the FICA, and not necessarily the tax coming out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Any other questions? Yes. Now's your chance. So now you said the offices are still closed. So what are people doing?
All phone questions and applying online.
Applying online. So that will probably remain then, right?
I think so. And the fact that Social Security is getting a lot more black and white, right? Getting rid of some of those strategies like file and suspend that we used to really kind of play around with. It's actually not as bad to file. The tricky part is, again, if you were part of the government, if you've got some of those scenarios where maybe your husband passed away and you still have minor children, more of the tricky stuff, that's a little bit harder. But the plain and black and white filers online is fairly easy.
Now, Emily, you mentioned earlier that there are cost of living increases in Social Security. How often does that happen? Is that an annual thing, or what is the percentage usually? Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yep. So it's usually annual. There are some years where there's none. and it's all based on CPI or inflation numbers, and it's
Mhm.
very marginal. Like it's a few dollars here and there bumped up. I've never seen it go down. I've only ever seen it stay or increase slightly, and it happens on an annual basis. So this guide that we have is updated every single year, and the numbers will adjust to the new rate.
And there are some articles that, or people who say that you're not going to be able to get your full Social Security, just a percentage of it. That's going to keep happening over time. Is that true?
So I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I can't tell you. It's it's certainly an income that you're due, but if Social Security were to run out of money, they would have to figure out a way to give you a different percent. I do believe at some point it's going to be addressed, but again, it's so political. The change will not be difficult. The getting the policies voted on will be.
Okay. Can you claim Social Security benefits if you decide to retire outside of the United States? That's a good question.
It's a great question. So it depends on the country. So we do have reciprocity with Canada. That's actually one of the easier countries where it goes both ways. You could work in Canada and be a US citizen and get US Social Security. You could be a Canadian citizen working here and get your Canadian Social Security. So that's the easiest. I don't know the other countries offhand. They're very few and far between, but the answer is yes, technically, depending upon the country.
Okay. This person said he's turning 70 on July 10th, 2022. When can he start claiming the earliest maximum benefit?
He can file 3 months prior to his birth date, but you still won't claim, you put your claim date on your 70th birthday.
Okay.
Yep, so you can go in and maybe start thinking about that paperwork in your mind, and hopefully by then the offices are open.
Yeah. If you're under SERS, and can you get spousal SSI if you were married for 10 years and then divorced?
So SERS, again, is that benefit we talked about, that the answer is maybe. Just trying to find it past it. So the rule of thumb is 1.5 times. So if your pension, sorry, I just went by it again. If your pension, here we are, if your SERS and your retirement pension from SERS is 1.5 times greater than the amount of Social Security benefit you're going to get nothing. If it's not, there's a calculation of where your number will come from. Let me give you a real example. My aunt is a teacher in the Massachusetts public system. They don't pay into Social Security. They have pension, but they don't qualify for Social Security because they don't pay into it. Her husband, my uncle, worked for the electric company his whole life. He gets Social Security. My aunt will never get spousal or survivor off of my uncle because her pension is 1.5 times greater than those numbers. So for the question that was just asked, it would depend on how much you're getting in pension and the amount of money of that spousal. Usually the answer is no, but it's worth asking.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? And John and Emily, do you want to give us, someone mentioned that they'd love to see that calculator tool that you have?
I'll send everything to John. I can't directly send anything to the general public, so I'll send it to John and I'll let him take it from there from the group.
Okay, John, do you have a slide where you can share your contact information?
Well, not prepared. I didn't, I didn't think about that as far as that goes. Can somebody, do they have I can either give them my email address or I can,
I can type it right into the chat if you'd like.
Okay, I'll be glad to do so.
Give it to me.
Send it to you?
Yeah, send it to me and I'll send it to everyone. Emily, will Social Security cut even work? Hold on a second. Okay. Not sure I understand this question. The person is asking about the question regarding internships for students. Can you clarify the question? I'm not sure I understand. And I'm going to copy John's email here for everybody in case you have more questions or want that calculator chart. Let's see. She's asking, will Social Security work as an internship for students? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. If you would just clarify a little bit.
If your internship is paid and you are a W-2 employee, you can start your quarters. But if you're a voluntary internship, they would not consider that working or paying into Social Security.
Okay, I
If
understand.
you're
All
asking
right.
about that below 24, the working for 1.5 years, internships would not qualify if they were not paid and documented.
Right. So she's an undergrad working as an intern in a tech company. And will her paycheck have Social Security?
If she's paid and getting a paycheck, yes.
Contributions? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad we got that sorted out. All right. Well, Emily, again, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
helping us understand this very complicated subject. John, thank you for your time and attention. I'll put John's email in here one more time in case anybody has any follow-up questions. And my email is lorraine.maffa@loudoun.gov. Feel free to reach out to me also if you have any questions. And thank you all so much for attending.